So why is there so much confusion about spiritual gifts? If this is the thing that is supposed to unify us, why is it that we have so much misunderstanding? I believe there are three continuums along which you will find people on the issues that surround spiritual gifts. One continuum is a continuum of cessation. At one end of the continuum, you have people who believe that all spiritual gifts have ceased. The scripture that talks about when the perfect has come, these things shall pass away in 1 Corinthians, these people believe that the perfect was the perfect canon of scripture. And that once we had the perfect canon of inspired scripture, there was absolutely no need for spiritual gifts at all. And spiritual gifts, therefore, have completely ceased. At the other end of the spectrum, you have people who believe that spiritual gifts are operating now in exactly the same way that they operated in Jesus Christ and in the apostles. That there is absolutely no change between that time and now. In between, you have all sorts of people at different places along the continuum. Primarily, what you will find among most evangelical believers who don't tend toward the charismatic is a belief that that all of the gifts are still in operation, um, except for maybe the sign gifts. There are people who believe that the sign gifts were only during the apostolic age. And so now we no longer have speaking in tongues, we no longer have gifts of healing, or no longer have gifts of miracles. And that those gifts have ceased. That's why in so many of the listings, when you take a spiritual gifts inventory, you won't find the sign gifts listed because those people believe that they have ceased. Um, there are other people who are still on that continuum of cessation who would say that those gifts haven't ceased, but that they might not be in operation in, say, a developed nation like the United States, where we have a copy of the Word, we have the canon in our language, and so we don't have a need for those sign gifts. So those sign gifts would have ceased. Everybody is, to a certain extent, um, on down the continuum of cessation, because most of us do not really expect to see a miracle of somebody being raised from the dead. We don't expect to see a resurrection miracle. That's something that we attribute to Jesus, and not really to this day and age, and to an average follower of Jesus Christ. So that would be a continuum of cessation. There are people who believe that either all of the gifts or some of the gifts have ceased in operation. Then there's a continuum of distribution. There are people who believe that every believer has received every gift, and that they just operate at different levels in different believers. There are people who believe that you receive all the gifts at birth, and that you develop them as you become a believer. And then there are people who believe that you can receive a multitude of gifts. There are people who believe that you only receive one gift. So you can see that there's a continuum of belief about how the gifts are distributed and when. And then the continuum that's probably most confusing to most of us is the continuum of listings. You will see, my systematic theology professor said that he believed a spiritual gift was anything at all that helped us do the work of the church that we were given. A talent, an ability, an opportunity. All of those would be spiritual gifts. Um, there are others who believe that anything that's listed in Scripture that is called a gift or called spiritual would be a spiritual gift. These people will include things like celibacy as a spiritual gift or craftsmanship as a spiritual gift. There are others who believe that the gifts are listed in very specific listings, but that those listings are not all inclusive. That the listing of spiritual gifts is wide open to many, but that these are samplings. The listings that Paul gives are samplings of spiritual gifts. Also on the continuum of listings are people who think that there is one list of spiritual gifts and Paul has sampled from it, and so they will pull from all those lists to create a consolidated list. So you can see there is a whole continuum of beliefs about the spiritual gifts, and this sometimes leads us to confusion about them. I believe again that an understanding of Paul's categories as he listed them in 1 Corinthians 12, 4 through 7, can help us clarify and clear up some misunderstanding in these continuums of understanding.